Good evening. Welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, October 22. If you are watching live on Monday, October 22, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. Our call-in number is 769-1677. As always, you can watch our meetings live on either Verizon or Cablevision TV service. You can also watch at pctv76.org, both in a live webcast and in on-demand web services thereafter. So our next scheduled meeting is a regular meeting of Monday, November 5 at 8 p.m. with a work session at 7. But our next public meeting is a meeting tomorrow night at the school district, our annual joint meeting with the school board. So that's tomorrow night, Tuesday, October 23 at 7:30 p.m. in the Media Center at Pleasantville High School. That precedes the regular high school school board meeting. So we have, I'll just offer a couple of announcements because we have quite a long list of things going on tonight. The first is to thank all the kids and families that participated in the Halloween window painting that went on downtown this past weekend. They look great.
They do look good.
So thanks to all of them, and thanks to our rec department for organizing that, and to all the stores that allow that to happen on the front of their windows. It's a great village tradition and one that kids remember for years and years and years, long after they no longer participate. So that was a great thing. Next weekend is the annual Ragamuffin Parade, one of the great days in Pleasantville. That starts at noon at Bedford Road School, marches its way down Bedford Road, and there is a special event tomorrow on that same Saturday that starts at 9 a.m., and that is the Tina Gambino Memorial 5K Run Walk. I say run and walk because you don't have to run, you can walk and still participate. Michael Bloom, a Pleasantville High School 8th grader who was actually the newly elected president of, Pleasantville Middle School 8th grader, newly elected president of the middle school, is the brains behind this, as well as the Tina Gambino Foundation and the Gambino family. But I encourage you to get to tinagambino.org to read about it and to sign up online. And I also recorded a brief PCTV session with Michael Bloom about that, and that is also available on PCTV and also online. So
you could sign up. You could sign up day of too, as long as you get there like earlier, because it starts at 9.
Big day on Saturday in Pleasantville, New York. Please participate.
Just to mention, too, that the farmers market will still be going on despite the other activities. I know a couple people question that.
We'll have more to say on this in the future about the farm market, but some of you may have read in the various news organs that the village is changing its farm market product.
Organic news.
The village is changing the arrangements for management of its farm market and will be headed in a new direction. The farm market is going to be every bit as good as it ever was, and there are all kinds of new things anticipated, including the start of a winter market that will take place in the middle school cafeteria that will get started in January. So we'll have very close to 12-month services from the farm market indoors in the winter, and then spring through early winter down at Memorial Plaza. So anything else? Anybody?
At 3 o'clock on Saturday, too, I think the doggy muffin
Oh, yes. Thank you for reminding me of that.
parade is happening at the dog park.
Which is also a fundraising program for the scholarship fund.
Right.
So do you know how people can get info about that?
No.
Scholarship fund, I think, has a
If you go to
I'll be honest.
has a website.
the school district website has a link
Right.
to the Community Scholarship Fund, so you could probably start there.
So you run or walk in the morning, you march with your kids in Halloween costumes down Bedford Road at noon, and then you get the dog dolled up as Harry Potter and take him down to the dog park to participate in that. It's a big day. Don't miss it.
Is the Ragamuffin noon or 11?
I thought
it was
noon.
11.
Have I misstated
It's
it?
noon.
Noon, they line up at
Okay, we
11.
changed it.
Okay.
Earlier before we
With
took
that
this.
warm-up, having talked about dogs dressed in costumes,
It's a segue to...
it's an illogical segue to the first item on our agenda. We have our auditors here from O'Connor Davies, who have spent a
Don't
few
judge
weeks
us, whatever you're
at the village.
Don't
And
take it personally.
I welcome you both back for the presentation of the audit for the fiscal year that ended May 31, 2012.
That's right.
I know, like, I always come on after a lot of different things at a lot of meetings. I don't know if I come
See
on
that
after
first?
Harry Potter.
In the spirit of the season, they've
Dogs.
dressed up as auditors.
Good evening, as you said. I'm Scott Oling. This is Rob Danielle. We're both partners with O'Connor Davies, and we're here tonight to present the results of the financial audit that was conducted a few months ago regarding the year ended May 31st, 2012. You have the audit report in front of you, and even though we prepare the whole report on behalf of the village, the only part that really belongs to us is the auditor's opinion, which is right after the table of contents at the beginning. And basically, we've issued what's known as a clean opinion or an unqualified opinion on the village's finances. So in layman's terms, that means that we believe that these numbers fairly present the results of operations for the village's fiscal year that ended May 31st. Now, as you know, the village operates a variety of funds. We follow fund accounting in government, so every fund kind of gets its own pot of resources and expenditures. You operate a general fund, which is what we're going to really focus our time on tonight. But you also have a water fund, a debt service fund, a capital projects fund, a pool fund, and a refuse fund. Those are all the funds that you operate. We're going to focus on the general fund. We'll touch on some of the other funds, but I want to focus primarily the few minutes we have on the general fund. If you turn to page 47 of the audit report, page 47 is the income statement for that general fund for the year ended May 31st, and page 48 gives you a comparative, so you can kind of have a side-by-side of what's happened with the village over the last 2 years. The top part of the page is the revenue sources that you use to support your budget. First column is the original budget, so this is the budget that the village board approved in the spring of 2011 for your operations for the 11-12 fiscal year. And you could see that there's a whole bunch of revenue sources, but the primary ones of which, of course, are the levy of real property taxes at about $9.1 million, non-property taxes of $1.1 million, which is primarily made up of the sales tax distribution from Westchester County and utilities gross receipts taxes. So $1.1 million of the budget estimated to come from those sources. And you have what we call departmental income. So those are all the various charges that you charge people for different things, parking, parks and rec, all the various fees that the village charges for different things. So when you put all those together from an operating point of view, you expected your revenues to come in at about $12.1 million for the general fund. In the middle part of the page are your expenses, what you spend those funds on. Primarily of which is the public safety, which is the police function for the village. General government support are more of the administrative type functions of the district, and tax certiorari's would also be reflected in the general support categories. And then as you go down, transportation or the highway, street maintenance type of expenditures. Culture and recreation, estimated at $1.9 million. Those are primarily the parks and recreation type programs that you run. And then employee benefits of $3 million. So those are the benefits you provide legally or contractually to your employees. And it really represents contributions to the pension systems, which we'll touch on in a little bit, health insurance costs, your share of FICA costs, workers' comp, all the things related to employees. So the expenditures, the operating expenditures, as you can see, were originally estimated at $11.8 million. And then you move further down the page there and you see transfers in and transfers out. You budgeted money on the transfer in line, totaling $450. You budgeted to take in $275,000 from the water fund and $175,000 from the debt service fund. That's the plan, and we'll talk about what happened with that plan in a few minutes. And then the transfers out were originally estimated at $1.4 million, and those basically represent transfers that have to go to those other funds that I mentioned, primarily the debt service fund, to fund monies that the village has borrowed for primarily capital improvements. You have your annual principal and interest debt service obligations. So when you get down to the end of that first column on page 47, you see a negative $675. So when you adopted this budget last year, you anticipated your spending would be greater than your revenues. That's why it's coming down to negative $675. But of course, in the state, we're required, unlike New York State, to actually have a balanced budget in place. So you balance that budget by appropriating fund balance, your savings account, as it were. and you use monies that had been accumulated in prior years to balance the budget. Because if you had not done that, you would have either had to have levied additional property taxes for $675,000 or cut expenses $675, or some combination of the two items. So the policy here was to use $675 to help get through this plan. The second column is the final budget. So as you go through the year, you amend the budget a variety of ways. You could see that the revenue estimate on the top part of the page went from $12.1 million to about $12.2 million. So again, some revenue sources come in, some grants, some donations. You modify the budget to accept that money, and you modify the expense side of the budget to spend the money on whatever the funds came in for. In the middle of the page, you see that the expenditure budget was raised to about $12 million from $11.8. Most of that had to do with increasing monies for tax certiorari refunds. And then you see other resources just reallocated to different lines. As your needs change during the year, you reallocate the resources within the budget. And then, so when you come down to the bottom of that column, you now see a bracketed $941,000. So the use of fund balance from a plan point of view, this is still a plan, it's the revised plan, had you now actually taking more fund balance than originally planned. Some of that was to fund increases in tax certiorari claims that had to be paid from these resources. And then there were a variety of other minor things that came out of from fund balance to help fund the budget. But again, your plan stayed in balance, the final plan for the year. The third column is what actually happened. And you could see that the revenues, the good news, is they came in at $12.6 million. So from a budget plan of 12.2, you did $386,000 better than budget, or about 3% better than budget on the revenue side of the budget. There's a variety of areas where things were better this year than last year. If you compare to last year, your revenues came in about $12.1 million on page 48. So overall, your revenues were up about $470,000 this year over last year. $200,000 of that came from the levy of property taxes, about a 2% or so increase in the tax revenue.
Funny you should use that percent.
It is funny. It's pretty close to that. Use of money in property line, the departmental income is parking, those kinds of things. There was, relatively most of the revenues stayed kind of flat. You did get some federal aid this year that wasn't there last year. That was for reimbursement for the damage from Hurricane Irene. And everything else was pretty much, intact in the revenue section. In the middle of the page, the expenditure side of the page, you could see that your expenditures came out to $11.5 million. The revised budget was $12 million, so you came in about $450,000 better than budget, about another 4% savings on the expenditure side of the budget. And if you look to what was spent last year, 11.3, you basically kind of held expenditures flat for the year. In this environment is pretty amazing. The area that really went up, though, as we're all aware, is the employee benefit area. Employee benefits in the aggregate went from $2.5 million last year to about $2.8 million this year, or about an increase of $250,000 or so. Some of that was on the employee retirement system line. Of course, the rates from the retirement systems went up, dramatically. Cost you an additional $60,000 in payments to the employee's retirement system. For the police and fire retirement system, your cost went up also about $50,000 this year. Your workers' comp costs went up also about $50,000 compared to last year. And health insurance went up about $80,000. So when you kind of put all those together, so basically what you had to do is, in order to keep overall spending to an increase of under $200,000, which was well under 2% gross, but we know those costs went up by themselves, the $250. That means everything else in your budget kind of was held flat. So you manage the budget. Obviously, certain things happened this winter. Certainly, this was a more mild winter, so certain costs, were certainly less than, thankfully, less than anticipated. Obviously, we can't count on that every year. Other things offset that, but the bottom line is the fringe benefits went up, and obviously, they're going to continue to go up. Certainly, in the next year or so. some preliminary numbers from the retirement system has those rates continuing to increase. The thing that I did want to talk about, though, was towards the bottom of the actual column, when you look at the transfer in line in that transfer in, transfer out group, and you see you transferred in $175,000. So that was the budgeted transfer from your debt service fund that you used to offset some of your debt service costs from here. But the debt service fund's fund balance is almost depleted because you took similar money again in your 12-13 budget, and those funds will be exhausted at the end of 12-13 unless there's something that I'm not aware of. So, in other words, when you go into starting to develop your 13-14 budget, that revenue source of $175,000 that was used to help balance the general fund budget will not be available. So that's obviously something that you're going to have to look at as you head into your budget deliberations for the 13-14 year. But also the budget contained, as you can see, that line came in $275,000 short of your budget. The other $275,000 was budgeted to come in from the water fund. The water fund, however, did not generate enough resources on its own to be able to give the general fund $275,000. So therefore that transfer was not made. Again, a similar transfer, I believe, was budgeted in the 12-13 fiscal year. So again, if that can't materialize, that's a good word. If that can't materialize, then that would be, another $275,000 issue. So the good news was you had positive revenues besides this of $386,000 better than budget, and you had $450,000 of savings on the expense side of the budget. So you were initially a positive $800,000, almost $850,000 to budget, but it had to be offset by the $275,000 that you weren't able to realize from the water fund. So overall, when you look at the bottom of 47, third number up in the actual column, you see a negative $372,000. So that means for the year, your expenditures did exceed your revenues by $372,000. But the majority of that was planned use of fund balance for a tax certiorari, which I forget the exact amount, but it was pretty close in that area.
Mostly the Foxwood second payment.
Yes.
About
So that was a planned use of fund balance, which was part of the $675 that was appropriated to balance this budget in the first column. So if you kind of back that out, it was almost like a break-even year. Everybody follow me on that? It's
Funny how that works.
Assuming the certs remain.
It's,
quiet
but
in
yes,
the
of course,
future,
still
right.
have the certs.
Right.
So, but overall, the fund balance did diminish, but it was a planned diminishment, as it were. So from a budget point of view, you actually did about $570,000 better than your plan, because your revised plan said we're going to use $940,000. So if everything came out exactly as you planned, you spent every dollar that was planned, and you took in revenue as every dollar was planned, your fund balance would have diminished by $940,000. It diminished by $372,000. So you did better than your plan by $570,000. Makes sense? Okay. So the fund balance diminished from $3.4 million to $3 million, just over $3 million at the bottom there. When you go back to page 46, the fund balance is the second number up from the bottom. It's the difference between your assets and your liabilities. Up top, you have $3.8 million in assets, mostly in the form of cash, $3.3 million. All your cash is in FDIC-insured banks. You're not allowed to be in hedge funds, mutual funds, derivatives, any of that good stuff. So it's also any funds that you have at these institutions that's in excess of the FDIC coverage, they have to provide collateral to you, so all these funds are also collateralized. So it's really the safest things you could be in. The flip side, of course, is the interest rate is
Nothing.
Zero.
near zero. So that's the flip side of the equation. The liability section, you have about $800,000 of liabilities, in the middle part of the page, and that's what nets down to the $3 million in fund balance. The fund balance is presented under this new style of GASB 54. So if we go back a little bit to page 41, we give you a little bit more detail than what we could fit on that page. Hopefully everybody's eyesight is good, but you have a lot of funds here, so we had to try to get this onto a page. And if you
41.
look at the 2012 general fund column, and you can see a comparative a few columns over for the 2011 general fund. But you can see the total in the current column, $3 million. There's a small amount that is what we call non-spendable, which is $2,000. That's just for some small prepaid items. But the main thing is there's $156,000 set aside for capital projects. Can only be spent upon board approval of taking these funds to do whatever capital project is voted on. You then used, as you go down this column, you used $330,000 for what we call subsequent years expenditures. So you use $330 to balance your 12-13 plan. So you could see that was down from the $675 that was used to balance the plan you were in now. But again, really that difference was that tax certiorari. So it was kind of like a one-time use of fund balance for a one-time thing, which is a good thing. But now, in essence, think about it, in the 12-13 year, you kind of need to regenerate $330,000 in order to be able to have those resources available for 13-14 and deal with the issues that I brought up about the water fund transfers that are budgeted and the use of the debt service fund. So the bottom line is that you have $2.5 million in what's called unassigned fund balance, which used to be undesignated fund balance, and that's your free and clear money to be used, for going forward and to deal with contingencies and all those things. So the village is in good financial shape, with that fund balance, at this time. And
Is
try to
that
do that
optimal?
relatively quickly.
Is that an optimal amount?
Yeah.
Would you like to see more? Would you like to
Would
see
I like to see-
less? Sometimes we've heard we have too much.
Right.
I mean, we can't seem
That
to
was
get it right.
that was
It's still a percent of
pre-2008.
your- You still want to see it at a percent of revenue,
Well, I don't want to
right?
see anything.
No, I
I'm
know.
just a bean
No,
counter.
well,
So
let's
just,
the optimum point.
Yeah, I
of
mean,
it.
every place, is different. Every place has different needs, and every place has different policies as to how much fund balance, they want to retain. So, I see places that have near zero, and then I see places that, have a strong fund balance position like you, and then I see a lot of stuff in between.
So is that a way of saying that we are at the strong end of
You're
the
at the
spectrum
strong
of your
end where
clients?
you are. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
But, you have, obviously,
Good place.
just like everybody else, you have fringe benefit issues to deal with. You have labor, contractual issues to deal with. So, in this environment, things are not growing as quickly as
Right.
everybody would
Well, and
appreciate.
it's a symptom of all that we've all been talking about for several years. Based on your experience around the county and beyond, our recent sales tax, our share of the sales tax has been edging up a bit.
Just a bit. We saw some
Nothing
leveling off.
spectacular.
It doesn't seem to be decreasing. It
right.
seems to kind of hit a trough.
And so,
so-
that feels like sort of the planning basis going forward, at least in the very near
That's because we
future.
didn't project it up, the county did,
Right.
we didn't.
Right.
We were more realistic.
Ditto with mortgage tax, which has been edging a bit down.
Right. I mean, again,
Any
it's
sense of-
obviously a function
yeah.
of the prices, and the sale
Right.
price of homes and the volume.
Right.
So we all know what's going on there. So
Right.
yeah.
Well, and we undertook a review of the water fund to consider ways to restore it to a greater vibrancy, and have taken a few steps on that front as well. So
Right.
the management letter indicates that we are pretty well ship-shape, and you have pretty good confidence about the way we manage our operations and the paper trails we keep.
Absolutely.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
We had a conversation with our finance department as well as several other departments about our desire and their desire to move to an increasingly paperless or paper-reduced workflow. From an audit standpoint and from the standpoint of what you see here and elsewhere, any flags to raise about that?
No, I mean, we would have to, obviously, if you go to that kind of system, we have to review the controls that are in place in that system, the authorization process and how things, work through the system. We're trying to be paperless too. So most of our
You're
auditors,
so far well.
except for this, except for this.
We can
It's
tell.
available in a PDF though. So, so
yeah.
I mean, obviously there are different audit considerations when you go to that kind of system versus having
Yeah.
paper everywhere.
Right.
So we have places that are certainly already like you deal with Westchester County. They're a mostly paperless system. So we deal with it when we do their audit.
And I have spent some of my life as an elected official thinking that our Munis software is hitting a pin with a hammer. I'm more sympathetic to it than I once was. From your standpoint and what you see here and elsewhere, is it a solid, appropriate system for us to be using?
Yeah, Munis, I mean, that is the system that a lot of clients,
Right.
I can't evaluate whether it's the best system.
Right. Why not? Come on. We're looking for value-added services.
No. But no, I mean, a lot of our clients use that system,
Yeah.
and we have not had any issues dealing with it. They may have, but we have not.
All right, I thank you for that. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much,
a lot.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right. Try to get you home for the debates.
I don't think our prospects are too good on that front, but you're set.
Mayor, while we
Good
can, I'd just like
Yeah.
to acknowledge our finance department and the work that's...
Exactly right. Here in the front row are Mary Schwartz, our treasurer, and Pam Hoffman, our deputy treasurer.
Thank you.
Well done, ladies.
A very well-run operation, and patched a bunch of holes in our hull over a period of time, and we look forward to smooth sailing, if you can accept that metaphor. So thank you an awful lot. We much appreciate it. And, for the benefit of those people watching, I think that little taste you got of what we all deal with here on the board and what our finance department and Patty, our administrator, deals with on a daily basis reflects the fact that there are an awful lot of people, both Patty's administration and the finance department, as well as all the department heads, who are on a daily basis trying to get the best bang for the buck for the tax dollars we ask from you. And it is a difficult time for us to balance the budget, just as it is, I know, for many Pleasantville residents. And if there's anything you can take away from that, I think it's that you've got a team of people here, every one of them focused on the same goal, and that is to sort of find the compromise between the art of keeping Pleasantville the great place it has always been, and the science of trying to balance a budget in challenging times. So
Well, I appreciate that, and I have the highest degree of confidence in my staff, so I thank you both for all this effort again.
I have sometimes said, and I say it with respect, that I sometimes think Mary would rather not have $10 of revenue than to get $10 and not know where it came from with a proper paper trail. So that's sort of a good story. We're going to switch up the sequence of our public hearings. We have 3 tonight, one on Cablevision franchise, one on a local law considering amending parking meter zones on Bedford Road, and the last, which we're going to make the first because I think it's the shortest and least complicated, and that is a public hearing identified on our agenda as number 3 on the proposed abandonment of a 40-foot wide right-of-way formerly known as Manville Lane and former to that known as Pierce Lane, which traversed through between Bedford Road and Washington Avenue in the village of Pleasantville through lands presently owned by 485-501 Washington Avenue Company, LLC, and designated on the village tax map as section 99.14, block 1, lot 79. Is there a motion to open the public hearing? Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing has begun. Patty, do you want to just set the tone?
Yeah, I would be happy to. As a matter of doing due diligence with respect to a potential acquisition of the Benenson property, which is at Washington Avenue in the village of Pleasantville, we know it as the campus office complexes. Toll Brothers discovered in a title search that there could still be some ownership interest in a road that was known as Pierce Lane and then formerly Manville Lane, coming off of Washington Avenue and accessing the property known as the Benenson properties and the campus office complex. That particular lane has not been used for public purposes for decades. There has been a de facto abandonment of that road with respect to public purposes. It doesn't serve any other properties. It does not connect to any other interior roadway systems in the village. It does not provide that type of public function that a roadway should. We've not maintained it, we've not plowed it, we've not encouraged use of it notoriously, and nor have we signed it with any particular sign package. In other words, it's not something that we intended to ever have used for public purposes ever again. And whether or not it was is still a subject of some discussion. We're not sure it ever was used for a public road, except there was a lot of activity in the past, people traveling to and from different parts of the village. In order for Toll to move forward with the acquisition of that property, it needs to clear this hurdle from a title point of view, and it needs this board to take an action to formally abandon what was at one point in time known as Manville Lane, at least that portion of Manville Lane. It shows on our tax map as a private road. It's been assessed notoriously to Benenson. They've been paying taxes on it. So it clears another hurdle with respect to whether or not it was ever public property at a certain point in time. As I said, it may have been. So this evening, the board is asked to take an action. Our counsel, Joel Sachs, the village attorney, recommends this procedure under village law to abandon the road. It requires a public hearing. It requires comments from the public to see if there is any legitimate interest in this road, or if the board had any legitimate interest. And hearing some or none, you can close the hearing. We should note that there is a short environmental assessment form that's been filed on this matter, where the village proposes to abandon a 40-foot right-of-way known as Manville Lane, formerly Pierce Lane, which easement traversed between Bedford Road and Washington Avenue within the village of Pleasantville through the lands presently owned by 485-501 Washington Avenue Company, LLC. This action does comply with existing zoning regulations. It's currently in a commercial district. It does not involve any other agency permits. It does not have any need for any permits to be issued by any other agencies. It's just a village board action, and we've determined that, to the best of our knowledge, does not have any environmental impact. So you can open the hearing, accept comments, if any, and then, act accordingly as the board wishes.
So we have opened that hearing in our midst of it. Is there a need to have a resolution? Should we close the public hearing and act on this? It is on our agenda, resolution number 195.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need a
That's
resolution for the short form secret statement?
I would make your resolution subject to the short form and subject to...
Include it in the resolution.
That's fine. Determination of significance that there's not any, that the proposed action will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. We'll write that into the resolution.
Okay.
Subject to
Right.
short form.
The secret determination that there is no environmental impact as a consequence of the action.
Okay. So
Thank you.
anybody else have any comment on that? Or is there any comment from the public? Again, our call-in number is 769-1677 if you have a matter that you would like to raise. No comments received, no comments from the board. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearing is closed. Our second public hearing is on the Cablevision franchise agreement. Is there a motion to open the Cablevision franchise agreement hearing?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing is open. By way of background, some of this a lot of you already know. The village was originally provided with cable television service back in an era when it was assumed that whoever arrived first and built out a network would become the sole provider, because there wouldn't be any economic incentive for somebody to come and string a second set of cable wires on the lines. So that was the case for a good long while, with a series of companies that went from American to Continental Cablevision, ultimately became the assets of Cablevision, providing service in the village of Pleasantville under a franchise agreement that expired and was renewed, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, expired in 2005. Robert Hawk, representative of Cablevision, who I'm sure we'll hear from shortly, nods in agreement that I've got that date right. So since 2005, the Public Service Commission in Albany has continued to extend provisional temporary authority to continue to operate in the absence of a new franchise agreement, as sporadic discussions have occurred over a period of time that were complicated by the fact that Verizon arrived as a proposed second provider and sought a franchise with the village of Pleasantville. That franchise was ultimately awarded about 2.5 years ago, and Verizon continues to operates here since then as one of the options available to Pleasantville residents for cable television. A whole series of discussions went on at the time, both with Verizon and with Cablevision. If I might editorialize, and I want to be clear that in this specific matter I speak only for myself, my view of it is that Cablevision was more than happy to sign a contract early in that process that they were pretty sure Verizon would not agree to, and thus increase the chances that they would remain the sole provider in this neck of the woods. And alternatively, in the absence of that, we're happy to sit back and let Verizon carry the water to drive down a series of benefits that accrued to our community, especially benefits that accrued to our public access cable TV station, PCTV. So we arrive at the moment for the subject of the public hearing, which is a draft agreement that Cablevision has given to us that is essentially exactly the version that exists in our current agreement with Verizon. The names changed from Verizon to Cablevision, and some other small items modified to reflect some of the technical differences that exist between the two systems. So we have retained Rick Turner, who's also here with us tonight, of Turner & Turner, local attorneys based in White Plains, as our special counsel on this matter. And Rick has been representing us and been involved in conversations both with Cablevision and with PSC in Albany on a couple of matters. And we continue to have discussions that have, I think, borne some fruit, and it's our expectation, pending the discussion tonight, that we are likely to adjourn the public hearing but not close it, so as to continue the process of answering some of the questions that remain. So I encourage Rick to comment, and then I would be pleased to hear from Robert Hawk from Cablevision with his comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Frederick Turner of Turner & Turner, retained by the village to look at the franchise agreements and try to strategize some of the problems with the PEG contributions specifically. This is a public hearing under sections 894 and 895 of the Public Service Commission rules to renew the existing agreement with Cablevision. And Cablevision is currently operating under a 1995 agreement, and originally signed with Continental Cablevision. That agreement was for a 10-year term with a 5-year renewal. That's the maximum term for any cable agreement. That expired in, you correct, 2005. Since that expiration in January 2010, the village entered into a cable franchise with Verizon to provide competitive cable services in the village. The Verizon agreement differed from the 1995 agreement that Cablevision was operating under in two significant ways, which are the subject of much discussion with the board. First, the Verizon agreement excluded franchise fees collected from subscribers from the definition of gross revenue, subject to the 5% franchise fee paid by Cablevision or paid by any provider to the village. And second, the Verizon agreement substantially reduced the annual PEG funding. Cablevision has now come forward and expressed an interest in renewing its agreement and submitted a proposed agreement mirroring the Verizon agreement. And Mr. Mayor, you said it was identical, and there are issues with that we still need to iron out. Just the language can't be perfectly symmetrical because it would then hinge on a renewal agreement of a new entrant into the marketplace, and this is actually a renewal of an incumbent. And there's various contingencies in the PEG funding that have to be ironed out to make that funding work and make sure that PEG funding does come through as you have asked for. We've discussed this issue with representatives of the Public Service Commission, with Computel consultants, your cable TV consultants, the mayor, your administrator, and of course with Mr. Hawk of Cablevision. And after considerable discussion, I'm very pleased to report that Cablevision has agreed to reconsider its insistence on a mirror image of the Verizon agreement, and has agreed to increase the PEG contribution to a maximum of $1.35 per subscriber per month, provided Verizon agrees to the same increase. Now, this will relieve us of the absolute cap that is in the Verizon agreement and creates a potential for the village to realize increased PEG funding, provided, as I say, that Verizon agrees to this increase as well. This agreement will give the village the potential of increasing PEG funding beyond the caps currently set by the Verizon agreement, which is not presently an option before you. There's one thing that came up in our discussions tonight, and that is the map of the service area. And I would encourage the board to follow up on that and ask Mr. Hawk about that. And as I said before, I want to emphasize that there are some details in the language that still need to be resolved. It can't be a completely mirrored image agreement because they have a new entrant versus an incumbent. And to make the PEG funding work, we have to straighten that out. But with that preface, I would turn it over to Mr. Hawk to explain where we are with Cablevision.
Thank you, Rick, and welcome, Robert.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and honorable members of the board. My name is Robert Hawk. I live at 70 Davis Avenue in White Plains. I'm happy to be back here. It's been a while, but I'm encouraged that we've made some progress in crafting a new agreement, and I'd like to speak a little bit about it. I don't have to give you the full history because a lot of that has been mentioned, but since the franchise we're operating under now expired in August of 2005, there were initial renewal negotiations between Cablevision and a consortium of Westchester communities in this area, of which Pleasantville was initially a part of, and then my understanding was not a part of. And so there was a negotiating process that predates my being at Cablevision, but I can say it's been almost exactly 4 years, actually a little longer than 4 years, when we first sat down to discuss jump-starting the process again. And I provided a franchise proposal to you in early October of that year, and within a couple of months there was a further development, and I would respectfully disagree with your characterization of what our proposal was. I think it was a pretty generous proposal. It obviously was dependent on the other provider respecting the amount that we were offering, but it was a sincere, well bargained for, I thought, proposal, and to which we never received a response from the village. So I just historically want to correct that one item. Turn the clock forward a couple of years. In April of this year, Cablevision submitted the proposal that's now currently before you. And as stated, the material terms of the agreement are identical in every way to the Verizon agreement, with the exception that there has been discussions since its introduction about the PEG grant, the size of the PEG grant, which I'll get to in a moment. The proposed franchise is for a term of 15 years. It would become effective upon confirmation by the New York Public Service Commission. The service area in the franchise is the entire incorporated village. Our hybrid fiber system is completely built throughout the service area, so unlike when you approve the Verizon agreement, there's no build-out schedule necessary at this time. The agreement provides for 10 free cable drops to specified municipal buildings and schools throughout the village. The agreement provides for a franchise fee that is 5% of our gross revenue paid quarterly. So then to get to PEG, the agreement requires a Cablevision, first the PEG infrastructure. Cablevision is required to provide 3 access channels, one each for government, educational, and public programming, and that we maintain access feeds back to our head end from the PCTV studio, Pleasantville High School, and Pleasantville Village Hall. As dictated by competitive neutrality with our main competitor, Verizon, the preliminary PEG grant provisions match the Verizon obligation dollar for dollar. And what that means is a $50,000 upfront grant, which is made in 3 installments on the effective date, the 3rd anniversary, and the 7th anniversary of the agreement. And then annual PEG payments equivalent to 40 cents per subscriber per month in years 1 through 5, 60 cents per subscriber per month in years 6 through 10, and 90 cents per subscriber in years 11 through 15. Now, in the subsequent discussions that I've had with Mr. Turner and Ms. Dwyer, obvious concerns were made about whether the very same PEG grant, which the board agreed to in the Verizon agreement, was going to be sufficient from the two companies to sustain access programming in the village. And in response to this request and the discussions that have taken place over the last month, Cablevision, as was mentioned by Mr. Turner, is willing to provide a provision in our agreement where we would pay additional funds contingent on Verizon matching that amount. The amount that we've discussed, which is our absolute ceiling on this, is $1.35 per subscriber. That's based on the maximum amount that the other members of the consortium would receive from Verizon on a per subscriber basis in the last 5 years of their agreement. This proposal would not require you to wait until the last 5 years of the agreement. All that would be necessary is a proof of the amendment of their agreement, and within 60 days we would then begin the calculation at $1.35 per subscriber.
That would be passed through. I mean,
Well,
that's where the money
we would
comes
reserve
from.
our right to pass it through. As of right now, Cablevision doesn't pass through the PEG grant. Charles Dolan, the founder of the company, feels very strongly that our bills should not reflect all kinds of different charges, different lines for different things. Very confusing, as you know, for phone customers. So there's always been an emphasis to have a simplified bill, and that's something that we've built into our cost. But we would reserve the right to pass that on as a line item.
Okay.
In addition, the other item that was mentioned was that there's some concern that with the same exact language in the PEG provisions, concern raised by Verizon, that there's a question of who's going to step first on paying. We have no problem stepping first. The only concern we have is if Verizon decides at some point to lower the amount that they're paying, that we have the option to level down to the same amount they did. So whatever technical issues were raised, Mr. Janus's letter to the village, we're happy to work out a way of solving that. So in closing, I'd like to thank you again for the opportunity to be here tonight. I think the discussions, began in earnest 4 years ago, and we're very eager to bring this process to a conclusion quite soon for the benefit of the village and for your access programs. And I'm available for
All right, thank you. I appreciate that. And firstly, I would say certainly appreciate your willingness to engage in the conversations you and your colleagues have engaged in over the last month, and the fruitful progress made with the proposed increased PEG grants. Again, contingent upon Verizon, understandably, so we appreciate that, and it has not gone unnoticed. I had a couple of questions, and others do too, I think. The first is right up front in the original description of the services. The Verizon contract referred to an FTTP fiber network, fiber to the premise telecommunications network, and your revised version that you proposed to us replaces that with the term hybrid coaxial fiber network. So could you just explain the technical differences between the network you have versus the one that Verizon has that occasioned the need to make that change in the text?
Yeah, sure, and it's a strictly technical issue. It's not a legal, FTTP is not a legal term of art. I think it's more marketing. But Cablevision system works where the trunk feeders, the wires that bring the signal to a neighborhood, or what we would break down by what we call a node, all that main feeder infrastructure is fiber optics. When you get to the local level, to your neighborhood level, rather than sending fiber from the feeder directly to the house, it's a metal wire. It's coaxial wire. So where they refer to fiber to the premises, our system is a combination of fiber optics and coaxial wires on the most local level.
And from the standpoint of the service provided, what distinctions do you make there?
I don't think very much. I think, we have an incredible amount of bandwidth built into our system that's not just providing video, but it's providing voice and internet as well. And, we deliver that capacity one way, and Verizon has chosen to build their system out completely in fiber. We deliver all the same services,
Right.
if that's what the question is.
Another matter that I know we have discussed in the past and has been discussed for a very long time with Cablevision is that you currently deliver the PCTV signal, the access signal, to a broader area than you deliver the education signal. So what that means is that because the Pleasantville School District is larger than the village of Pleasantville, there are many homes outside the village confines that are part of the school district that can't get the education channel. And the result of that is that for years and years and years, it must be 10 or more years, our public access station, PCTV, gives up a full day of its programming on Fridays to rebroadcast the material that is normally on the education channel, because that's the only way that that content can reach those other members of the school district who can't otherwise get it. And in previous discussions with Cablevision, there have been many assertions that the solution to that problem was near, but it has never been solved. Is that something that's on your radar screen at the moment for resolution?
I don't recall us having discussed this.
All right,
in the past,
maybe prior to your time, certainly Emily Spalding was who preceded you in this post. That was discussed at great length,
Right.
and I do think it's been mentioned in the past. But all right, that's the situation.
Right. The public access, the reach of public access out of Pleasantville is a legacy of the cable system the Continental built off the Ossining head end. And as a result of that, I think there are 3 communities in which the public access provider's signal is carried in multiple communities. That's rare. That's unusual. On a franchise area by franchise area basis, you have a right to 3 channels. You have a right to use them for those purposes, public, educational, governmental, within the confines of your franchise area. If you're talking about another municipality that the school district bleeds over and into that other municipality, you're potentially looking at creating some kind of an arrangement for them to use their educational channel capacity to show programming from a district that originates in your community. So you have the problem in that the municipal lines don't follow the school district lines, and the franchise guidelines are based on municipal lines. So the question is, how do you get the signal into another municipality where you have that arrangement? I don't know which municipality you're talking about.
Mount Pleasant. So, is that do I read from your answer that there's no likelihood of solving that anytime soon?
I think it's a difficult issue, and if I'm not mistaken, I think Mount Pleasant is covered by probably 5 or 6 different school districts. So,
no doubt.
There's then the question of how do you provide capacity for every one of them.
Well, the trouble with it is obviously, our immediate responsibility as Pleasantville trustees is the village resident. But by the same token, the Pleasantville School District is a big piece of our community's life, and the fact that significant number of school district residents cannot get the content they would like to get causes our access station to give up a day of its programming and be disadvantaged in an effort to resolve this technical problem. And I might add that Verizon does not have this problem. They're able to deliver the content to the school district homes without difficulty. So at the moment, the fact that PCTV does this for 24 hours on Friday is an accommodation solely to Cablevision. And it would be great from our standpoint if that could be resolved and or PCTV compensated for the problem.
I'm happy to ask to see
Okay.
if there is a solution.
Okay.
You know, like I said,
Great.
we've never discussed this.
Okay, great.
But I'll check into it.
I noticed in the section about provision of cable services, section 3, the Verizon contract made reference to serving residential areas and indicated that they would make cable service available to businesses in the service area at their option. That has been fulfilled in some areas and not in others, and again, it's not a requirement of the Verizon deal. Your proposed new language in section 3.1 doesn't refer to business subscribers at all.
Right, it takes it out.
Right. Is there a reason for that?
It could be a drafting error. If there was a provision that was not provided, if it's in the
Well,
original Verizon.
Well, the
agreement, that
Verizon
could be
deal
it.
says, and may make cable service available to businesses. So there's no commitment there and no requirement. I understand why it might have been taken out, since it was a sort of a statement of faith as opposed to any kind of a legal requirement. But do you know whether Cablevision cable services are available to virtually all businesses in the village as it stands now? In which case the point may be moot.
I'd have to check into it. My understanding, is that the village is completely built out. Sometimes with commercial structures, just because of the nature of their construction, it's difficult to run cable inside of them, and so there's been a hesitancy to have an obligation to serve businesses. But I can get data on how many commercial.
Okay. And again, I raise it simply because there was this mention of business in the Verizon agreement, again, not the requirement, but certainly as a statement of our intent, we'd like to see a pipeline of all three of these services, voice, internet, and cable, available to every household and every business to the extent that it's possible.
Right. Yeah, I think it may have been a drafting error that was removed. I
Okay.
think the issue was removing language related to construction, which was not necessary, but that may have just mistakenly left with it.
All right. Others have comments?
I'd like to just sort of on a more global comment. PCTV is largely there because of Cablevision, because of your involvement early on, and that's something, at least I was involved with it in the early days, that we've never forgotten. It was a great resource for our community. We thank you for that. And with the arrival of Verizon, things got complicated and so on. But I look at what your company does with Channel 12, sort of emphasizing local coverage. It's not this big international company. It's a company which reaches into your community. And if you came to us, if you started to talk amongst yourself early on, it would seem to me a good business plan would be, how can we be more hyper-local, to use your terms? And it just seems to me that one of the ways that you have succeeded in that is by your support of the PEG and local stations, in particular the strength of PCTV, which is one of the premier local stations in the county, certainly. So I guess I would encourage you, in thinking about this in the future, to not be challenging Verizon to sort of come into your territory. I mean, your territory is a local territory. You succeeded. And I guess I don't understand the corporate vision to undo that. You know what I mean? That Mr. Dolan, if he understood the issues, would not be so loath to try to up the pass-through, which is it was de minimis, a very minor cost, which might spell the existence or non-existence of PCTV in the future, which we deem a real resource. And as I said, it's something you guys did. It's something you guys helped us with in a real creative way. So I guess what I would say to you is, don't try to undo it just because of corporate, bickering or warfare. Let them walk away. Let's figure out a way to sort of increase Cablevision's stake here, and you guys succeed in that. I mean, that's something that's to your favor.
Right.
So.
I mean, you mentioned News 12. You should mention MSG Varsity as well.
Well, exactly.
Where we cover
you guys
all
do a lot
local
of
school
things
sports.
That's right.
And I think this proposal.
But isn't that what you do?
Pardon?
You're spending a lot of money on emphasizing local
Right.
things. This is a very small amount of money that you're talking about for PCTV, and yet it affects an area beyond what Pleasantville is.
Right, well,
So.
if I could just mention two things. I mean,
We're back after a brief delay to switch the tape.
so the proposal that we made, I believe, is in that spirit, because here we are. We had an extremely low proposal, not proposal, but you have an extremely low provision from Verizon. And we're not only giving you the ability to get increased funding from us over that, but it gives you the ability to sort of leverage that into getting the kind of funding that you need. And $1.35 compared to 40 cents, 60, 90 per sub is quite a bit. So I do believe
that's a good thing. But I mean, still, the ultimate result for our local station is a decrease in funding. And as you know, I mean, you're in the business. Technology is expensive, and we have cameras, God knows, that only have hour-long tapes. I don't know.
But we are in the position where we are carrying the burden of that funding, where what we're going to pay this year is going to be over $42,000 in PEG support,
Right.
and Verizon has paid, with the exception of just under $19,000, they're paying nothing. And the flip side of it is you have to look at one company bearing that entire burden, another company, which is in the Fortune 20,
Right.
has come in and is their entrance into the market is completely subsidized by the fact that they don't have to pay pretty much any support except for what's come out front. The other thing is,
but I mean, don't forget the point though that I know this personally. I've always been a Cablevision subscriber personally, and when Verizon came in, I didn't want to give that up because I don't want to lose PCTV and I don't want to lose Channel 12. So that's your anchor. That's what's sort of keeping people in your camp. If PCTV goes away, that's one less anchor that sort of keeps people. I mean, you sell a product, and that product is locally tailored in a really good way. Don't weaken that,
The other issue I'd like to point out is don't underestimate what the incremental costs do. If we were required to contribute a larger amount of PEG support, and we are required to raise our subscriber rates as a result, there's a lot of pressure on that video portion right now. There's program fees. There have been some unfortunate disputes between Cablevision and other providers as a result of that pressure that's pushing the price of a cable bill up. And so I wouldn't underestimate the incremental cost of putting that higher PEG amount on top of the subscriber in what's a very competitive market. And we're not just talking about competition with Verizon or Dish, which gives no PEG support, or other satellite providers which give no PEG support, but also there's a growing market in what they call over-the-top providers, Hulu, Netflix, which also don't pay any PEG support, and are a growing market. It's an attractive option to people other than traditional programming. So I would emphasize that we have to keep cost to our subscribers in mind as well.
So, and I appreciate all of that. Just for the benefit of those watching, the reason Verizon has not paid any of its per subscriber annual PEG fees is that their contract is contingent upon a similar responsibility being outlined in a new franchise agreement and a renewal agreement with the other providers, in this case Cablevision, and so they are not required to pay that until we sign on the dotted line with Cablevision, and Cablevision that agreement is ratified by Albany. But it's worth noting, and I don't say this as criticism of Cablevision, because it's Verizon that set the floor for PEG fees, but the PEG fees you present, even the $1.35 per subscriber, which at the outset I thank you for showing some flexibility on, and it's genuine thanks, represents a significant savings over what you now pay and have paid for many years. So I understand the pressure the video piece of the business is under, but any of the scenarios under discussion reduces what is already a de minimis cost, but it reduces further whatever contributions both companies are making. So, I mean, does that feel like a fair statement?
Well, I haven't run the complete numbers. I mean, I think, and I don't know what Verizon's subscribership is. You guys get the check, so you know what the two companies
but, I mean,
are paying.
you must have a pretty good sense of the competitive lay of the
No,
land.
I don't actually. Okay. But you can extrapolate.
Right.
You know, the $100,000 up front you're getting from both companies plus the additional support.
$50,000 up front, 100 together.
From each.
Right.
100 from both.
No.
Combined.
100 combined.
100
Yes.
combined. And then
Unless you want to give us 100,
potential
we'll take that 100.
potential per subscriber rate of $1.35. I mean, I think it can be quite large. I don't know if I agree.
Well, it's
results in
a
that
significant help over
reduction.
where we are right now. I mean, with the world we're dealing with, and much time was spent, and the record is clear of the many different opinions that were held both on the board and in the public at the time of the Verizon discussion, and I think you were here for some of that, about the strategy Verizon employed and the result that it produced, and the agreement we wrought for the reasons we did it. But none of that changes the reality that the impact of that on our public access station is significant and problematic and virtually entirely negative. And, I mean, $100,000 from two providers combined for these capital grants over 15 years is itself essentially inconsequential. I don't mean to suggest $100,000 isn't a lot of money. $100,000 over a period of 15 years, albeit paid in years 1, 3, and 7, means that in year, say, 13, we'll have a lot of Scotch tape and rubber bands on equipment that is, I assume, the modern day equivalent of a horse and buggy. So we confront a whole series of problems about how to sustain public access, education, and government TV, and I don't mean that all of those problems lie at your doorstep, because you are only one piece of the picture. But by the same token, it's a significant problem for us, a significant concern for us, and as Brian indicated, not a concern that has been a central component of Verizon's entrance into the market, and your traditional footprint has been different, and I think that's why you hear the appeal you hear.
Pardon?
That's why you hear the appeal you hear, because Cablevision has, for whatever philosophical and marketing reasons it has, made local service part of what you deliver to your subscribers.
I mean, I don't want to. I'll be the first to stand up and say I was wrong, and I appreciate this $1.35 being kicked around. But the reality is, there isn't a chance that Verizon's going to meet this and raise their rates. I think you guys know that. I think we know that. It's nice to have it in there. There's always hope. I'm hopeful, and I'm the first to shake both your hands if it happens, and I appreciate at least the option for the upside. You know, what this is, Robert, and you and I both know it, and let's just throw it out on the table, transparency for the community. This is Verizon's contract, which you guys went and inserted your name into, and took their everything, as you've got the right to do, and which honestly you told us that's exactly what you're going to do at some point 4 years ago after you guys got over the issue of per subscriber fee versus lump sum payment, which took the corporate entity a while to sort of get their hands around, and I understand and appreciate that. What I come back to, and the only thing I want to punctuate a little bit more on is the mayor's pointing out that the use of the PCTV station in order to cover deficiency in the technology or the ability of Cablevision to provide service to the area that receives our educational and public access channels. These are your guys' rules. You guys want level playing field. You want equality of service. I would like to say more emphatically than perhaps the mayor did that I'd like you guys to really ask that question, figure out how to either solve that problem once and for all, because I was part of discussions. I don't know that you were there or not, honestly. Maybe it was Emily, where we had this discussion. I know it was in early days, too, when we were negotiating first with you guys and then Verizon came on the scene. But to get this whole node, I mean, I didn't even know what a node was. That's where I learned what a node was, when it was described that the nodes didn't know. And so, and there was always this sort of, well, we're gonna address it and fix it. Right now, 1/7 of the studio's time is being dedicated towards solving a deficiency that is a Cablevision technology issue. And I'd like that either fixed once and for all as part of this contract, or some means of compensation to be come up with in order to recognize the fact that, indeed, the services that this community is getting from Verizon are not equal to the services that we'd be getting from Cablevision under this. If you can fix it, great. I've got no issue. I just would like it fixed, or a commitment by you guys to fix, followed by. I want the public access and the school district
Delivered to the people who need it.
Right.
Yeah, they're the exact same footprint from the educational channel and the public access channel. I mean, just to be clear, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it matters if it goes beyond the required footprint. It just has to reach the required footprint. Correct. Yeah. Correct. But other than that, again, I reiterate what Brian said. It's what I said during the Verizon. I know you were in the audience on some of that. That indeed, I think that two large companies are being somewhat short-sighted about all this, and I would like to think that there's a path to figuring out a way to create branded content or some way that both Verizon and or Cablevision can figure out a way to leverage what is indeed a unique and valuable resource locally to their own bottom line. That could exceed the 40 cents per subscriber that you're obligated to pay, even maybe exceed the $1.35. I think you guys have done a much better job of creating a local presence, although we've missed you at the Pleasantville Music Festival over the last couple of years. And Verizon's eating your lunch there. I think creatively there might be ways to do it, and we'd be interested in exploring that. I know the studio would be interested in exploring that with Cablevision as well. So please give that some thought in terms of how to either, one, fix once and for all that technology deficiency, or two, let's think of a way to make sure that the station's compensated for the work they're doing to make up for it on their own.
I just want to mention go back to the contract a little bit. I completely agree with what Jonathan just said. I'm new to this party. I was not involved in the previous negotiations with Verizon or the previous with Cablevision, but it seems like this hope that Verizon is going to match your generous offer is not going to come to fruition. But if you can't match the services that they provide, I don't think that we should match the reduction in fees. So I completely agree with what they said. I just wanted to ask you a question about two things in the contract. One is, at the very end, Exhibit B, it says service area. The service area shall be the franchise area. You guys have a whole section in here about not finding it necessary to provide any additional details concerning the construction or deployment timetables and such within the area. And I think that we do need a map and some details about that, and I'm just curious as to why that's in there.
Well, the deployment timetable was for the initial franchise
Right,
that
okay.
Verizon had. I mean, they came to the village with a system that was not completely built.
Okay.
So they have an obligation under state law.
Okay.
And mind you, a lot of this, we're having discussions about the borders of a franchise area. They all have their basis in state and federal law. It's not a policy decision on our part. So,
But let me ask you a question.
Sure.
If you get, which we hope, you get the means to which to expand to have our municipality match our education, and there is some deployment that has to happen, are you saying then we have no right then to see what the plan is, what the time frame is? I mean, I'm more concerned about going forward, not necessarily what's already been done, but if you guys are going to make some advances, and some of the ones that we've asked, do we get no information for that?
I mean, I think you have a right in the franchise to information about our system and its performance, and a right to maps. I mean, if Patty wants to call me up and she wants a build-out map of where it is,
Yeah,
she
I
can
think
do
Mr.
that.
Wagner's point is just simply, if you are going to be able to address the deficiency where Cablevision is not broadcast a part of our school district population, or if you are going to address that, are we going to be subject to, that particular section? And if so, can you tell us when you'd be building that out, and, can we have some dates certain?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a construction issue.
Okay.
Okay.
There are 3 PEG channels in Mount Pleasant, as we're obligated to provide. One of them is an educational channel, which they run. If the town of Mount Pleasant wanted to run Pleasantville School District programming, it's within their authority under their franchise to do that.
But technically,
So
can they?
it's not a deficiency.
Are you
We're providing what we're obligated
I
to do.
remember them.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that,
They
Rob. I
said
think
that
there is
4
a
years
problem.
ago.
I don't think they can broadcast it even if they wanted to. I think that's the dilemma.
There are at least 2 school districts that have a return feed
Okay.
to the Ossining head end. I believe-
Shane, are you in a position to comment on that?
Yes, I am.
Shane McGaffey, our PCTV station manager, is here, and he maybe can shed light on this, from our standpoint at least.
Shane, use a mic.
No, it's okay.
You can stay there, Robert, that's fine.
I mean,
Yeah.
there are 2 issues. One, when you discussed it, some are the nodes. The other issue is that the education channels tend to be the same. So if you look at Ossining and Chappaqua and Pleasantville, they're different public access channels. So Chappaqua is 75, we're 76, and Ossining is 18. Okay, so you can see those channels in other municipalities. The government channel's always 78. So if you're in Briarcliff, you're getting Briarcliff 78. If you're in Pleasantville, you're getting Pleasantville 78. If you're in Chappaqua, you're getting
And just to be
Newcastle.
clear, your next door neighbor, if you're at the border of your community, gets
You're getting
their own
78.
town, right?
Not
On
necessarily,
78?
because what ends up happening is you have nodes, and nodes serve, sometimes 200 people, sometimes 150, but basically what is sent to that node goes out to the people who are
All right,
attached to
so,
that node.
but I mean, the
So it's
point
not as clear.
The point I
as-
was hoping
Yeah.
you can address was, Robert indicated that, one possibility they might suggest would be for the town of Mount Pleasant Education Channel to broadcast part of the time Pleasantville content. Is that what you meant?
I'll let you speak and then I'll answer.
Is that what you meant?
What I said, my point is that Mount Pleasant has an educational channel that's assigned to it.
Which it uses, I think, for Mount Pleasant School District content.
It may very well. It's the town government's choice, as it is your choice in the village, to use the educational channel as you wish, as long as it's an educational purpose.
Okay, I get all that, but as a technical matter,
That
we
channel
don't
is
have
not
a
being
way of
broadcast.
delivering
Yeah.
to a third of our school district.
And one of the reasons that is because Mount Pleasant's educational channel is channel 77. and our educational channel is channel 77. So when they turn on their TV, they're getting theirs, they can't get ours. Now, if they dedicated a different channel to our education channel or a different one to Mount Pleasant, then you could have...
You get both.
Then you could potentially get both. But if they're both 77, that node is going to send out whatever it's being sent.
Okay, so what you were suggesting as a solution would be to add an additional channel based on the Mount Pleasant head end and feed Pleasantville content both from the Pleasantville High School head end and also from wherever the Mount Pleasant educational head end?
I mean, that would be one way of doing it. That would be the easiest way for them, I think, to do it.
It's not our problem to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
All we need to know is, can it be done?
Because I don't think it can be done from the node, the way the nodes are built, I don't think it can be done.
That's in Cablevision's camp, so
Right.
thank you for that, Shane.
Right, so the point I was just trying to make was that if something physical has to be done, according to what, a lot of details from Verizon have been deleted out, but basically here says that we have no right to really see what's happening, and I don't know if that's...
Yeah, again,
the best.
this relates to the initial build out of the system, and since this is a renewal and we're built out, I'd be shocked to know if there's any large area of Pleasantville where we're not built.
All right, so if you could double check that and confirm that that's the case, that you're essentially 100% build out. And the other thing is, I think collectively we've made ourselves clear about the issue about the school district, and you can get back to us about what the issues are there. I will say that, as others have said, back in Emily's day, we certainly were told on a number of occasions that there was a solution to this and it could be achieved. So let us know.
One other thing I'd like to talk about too is that currently the contract with Verizon was signed, Patty,
About 2.5 years
ago. And when you started today, you said you were looking for a 15-year contract, but I think it might be a benefit to the village if we had both contracts expiring at the same time. So would you be open to, because right now what you're talking about is having us make an adjustment to Verizon if they choose to, which makes it, I think, a little more complicated for us. So what we would look to do is have both expire in the same time frame. So instead of 15 years, it would be a 12.5-year lease. And what's your position on that?
It's a possibility. Again, we presented the Verizon agreement because we believe under the law we have the right to have the same agreement that they do. But if you want to discuss,
We're not looking to make your contract less because we want you less time. We're looking to do it so that we don't end up in this mess 12.5 and 15 years out from here. And I think that's really for our benefit.
We're thinking of the people who will occupy these seats after us. We're just that kind of people.
And when you're chairman, and you're taking over Dolan's job,
We're all
out
gonna
those
be here
13 years
15
from
years
now,
from
Robert,
now.
you'll appreciate the fact that this will make it easier to negotiate the two contracts at the same time.
Right.
All right, anything further from the board? Any comments from the public? Is there a representative of Verizon here? I think not, based on...
If I could just, in closing, I mean,
Certainly.
again, I hope you will view this as a productive proposal. I really don't think there's a lot of room, although something of the kind that you mentioned is a possibility. I really don't think we have a lot of wiggle room in terms of the PEG funding here. And I'm optimistic that this is, we can come to an agreement soon on this. I would just say that I don't think things are going to stay the same one way or another. I think we're either, hopefully going to have an agreement relatively soon, but if not, I don't think that it's going to be the status quo in terms of the PEG support. I just want to be upfront about that.
I don't understand what that means.
In other words,
What that
the
means is
current level of
we
PEG
would,
funding we receive from you will be reduced.
if we find ourselves continuing in a situation where Verizon is paying nothing and we're paying $42,000 and increasing for CPI, we're going to be exploring all of our options to be in a fair situation.
And I totally
And I want to be
understand
honest
that.
about
I
that.
totally understand that from a business standpoint. I understand the fairness aspect and so on. But pursuant to what I had said earlier, you have invested in something, and you have to reap some reward from that in a lot of ways. I mean, you have a lot of people who are with you because of what you did, what your company did, over the years, and you've developed loyal, a loyal viewership and a loyal customer base. It's just hard for me to understand why, in a corporate level, you would want to come back and just to even things up with your competitor, you would weaken your own position locally.
I don't think we've done that. Again, I came here four
you don't think
four
that
years
might
ago.
happen in the future?
We presented a proposal 4 years ago that I think was very generous and was on the right track for two companies to make a large contribution. It didn't work out that way. I'm back here trying to make the best out of the situation that's resulted of Verizon getting the agreement that they did. And I had the feeling that over the past month that we had come to a place where we could help provide more than you would get if we just flat out got Verizon's agreement, which we believe we're entitled to. So I don't want this to be seen as me just showing up here right now and saying it's the death knell of public access. I don't think it is. I think we've worked very hard to find something. But there has to be an understanding that after all this time, 4 years and even longer since the expiration of the agreement, we've been carrying an obligation that falls squarely on us, and for which we believe we're under the law, we are not responsible for bearing that completely.
But my point is, yes, you termed an obligation, and in fact it was, but you have sort of extended it, and that's been to the benefit of our local cable station. But there have been rewards back to you. This is not charity. We're not feeding children in Madagascar here. You're working on something that's delivering you immediate rewards and immediate profits. And I'm not asking you to read and respond to this. That's just all I'm telling you. It has been not without return that what Cablevision has done here, and people know it, and people are buying your services because of it. And I'm in business. I sell things, and if I had a competitor that had the same attitude as Verizon, I'd be saying, "Oh, right, they're such idiots.
Robert,
we have a foot in the door where they never could put it." And yet it seems to me
But they're benefiting from that as well. We're subsidizing.
Well,
if you want to talk about charity, we're subsidizing their access program.
What he's saying, he's saying a nice thing to you. I think that's. I understand what there's a lot of history here, and I've been through that history with you as well. But I think take it for what it's worth. What he's saying. He's saying a nice thing. He's saying that this other big company doesn't have the in the market as far as being that local do-good franchise. You guys have done that for us, and what Brian is saying is this is a good thing, and this puts you in a step ahead of Verizon, and that you should continue on that path, whether it be here or somewhere else. But that's what Cablevision is known for. Is that part of your business that the other people can't do? They just can't do it. They're just not capable of it.
You're already there.
You're there, and that's what he's saying. It's not criticizing anything you've done or you didn't do. It's really complimenting what Cablevision started, and that really why don't you finish it? Like, why don't you maintain your level in this market, because you own it. You own that part of it. So it's not critical at all, I don't think, right, Brian?
Anything but critical. No.
But what we're proposing, though, too, and it'll be the last thing I say, I get the feeling I wouldn't want it to be seen as something inconsistent with the level of support that's provided in neighboring communities.
Right.
This is a very generous proposal. I mean, granted, it's contingent on Verizon, but it is consistent with what other communities, some of which have very robust access as well. I mentioned Newcastle in particular
Yeah, they're not as good as we are.
one
They're not as
example.
good as
Well,
we are.
I didn't
No,
really,
they're not.
shouldn't have gotten in the
That's
middle
really-
of
there's really
you
nobody
can't
you
deny
can compare us to.
that they may try.
No, but there's nobody you
and-
can compare us to. This really isn't.
But-
There is nobody you
But
can
this
compare.
this is consistent and in some ways more generous. And I'm sorry I just said that, but I wouldn't want this to be viewed as something that by community standards, to borrow a term from another profession, is off the mark. It's not. It is very consistent with what other communities are receiving on the high side of support.
All right, so I appreciate that. What I would just add as a coda to that is that certainly my perspective is that there is a very high community goal for us to maintain a vigorous, competitive environment, not only so that residents have a choice of where they can get their video, their internet, and their cable TV, but also so that the Village of Pleasantville, which I think has certainly by national standards very high penetration of into households for these services, continues over the next years and decades to come, attracting the kind of investment that keeps us up to date. So none of us can predict with any certainty what the quickly morphing world of communications will look like in the coming years, but it does seem clear from the many hours I've spent in all of this over the years that Cablevision arrived in this world of internet and telephone as a cable company growing into these three services, and Verizon arrived at it as a telephone company morphing into the other services, and that genesis has profoundly influenced each company's approach to the market, each company's approach to negotiations, and the regulatory and tax environment that each company operates in. So all of us are either the victims or the beneficiaries of those differences, but part of what we all discuss is I think about that, and although I fully understand your position that Cablevision has been carrying the peg load in the last 2.5 years since the Verizon contract was signed, and as a directly financial matter, that is true. It's pretty hard to see Cablevision as a sort of a wounded animal struggling to the village board to try to get relief from this burdensome problem, because at least in some respects, for some of the reasons already described, the current competitive environment reflects who each company is, what they offer, and the world that they have chosen to make for themselves. So stay tuned. I do appreciate your coming, and we will have more to talk. And you and Rick Turner, I think, have productive exchanges going on. So we thank you for all of that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to comment before? I think we are likely to adjourn the public hearing as opposed to close it so that it can be continued at our next meeting. Any further comment? Any call-in to 769-1677? Rick, any coda of any sort? No. Is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing to our next regular meeting, Monday, November 5 at 8 p.m.?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Number two.
All right, we did 3 and 1 and now number 2. Is there a motion to open a public hearing
So moved.
on local law amending Chapter 173 Vehicles and Traffic, Schedule 27, Section 173-75 Parking Meter Zones, Bedford Road? So moved, says Colleen.
Yes.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to the public hearing. There has been a discussion that's gone on over a period of years, really, about the fact that the section of Bedford Road between Cooley Street and Marble Avenue has 2-hour meters when all other on-street parking around the village, or virtually all other, is 1 hour, albeit with a smattering of 12-hour meters. So what we have before us is a proposal under consideration to change the meters on Bedford Road between Cooley Street and Marble Avenue. That would essentially be, the parking is all on one side of the street. That would be from the Art of Wine to Jean-Jacques, from 2-hour parking meters to 1-hour parking meters. Our parking meters are enforced only up until 6 p.m. and there is no requirement for anyone to respect the time limits after 6 p.m. So the issue in question is 1 hour versus 2 hour versus the existing 2 hour parking in those areas up till 6 p.m. on weekdays and Saturdays. Then the hours also don't apply on Sunday. So is there any comment from anybody? We are in possession of a petition that was delivered to the village office dated October 12. That reads, "Dear Sirs, in anticipation of an upcoming Board of Trustees meeting where a proposal will be considered to amend the parking time limits for those meters on Bedford Road, we, the undersigned, being store owners and/or merchants on Bedford Road, are herein expressing our firm opposition to any change to the limits currently in place. We feel strongly that many of our customers require more than 1 hour to conduct their business, and that imposing less time will seriously jeopardize the viability of some of our existing businesses. It is strongly urged that given these tough economic times, the village not see fit to change parking limits which are vital to the business community and encourage customers to frequent our town. Very truly yours." And then there are 16 signatures whose names are included in the record.
I have a comment, and I understand that some of these, I don't think any of these business owners are here. I understand that probably some of them are conducting business. However, part of their petition against this move, which I will state for the record wasn't for initially, because I do consider very seriously the situation most businesses are in on a daily basis. I understand that you really just don't want to put this your customer parking in jeopardy. However, in this petition it states, "We feel strongly that many of our customers require more than 1 hour to conduct their business and that imposing less time will seriously jeopardize the viability of some of our existing businesses." I would like to ask the people, the 16 signatures here, where they park, because I go by that area 2 or 3 times a day, and I notice that a lot of these people that sign this park in those parking spaces, and they're business owners. And I feel that where do your customers park? So really why we're doing this is so customers have a place to park, so those are freed up, and those meters are freed up. Because I will say, I definitely visit a lot of those companies there, and I never can park there. I always have to park. If I go to Jerry's, I have to park 3 blocks away, and by the time I get to the car, my food is cold, and I have to reheat it when I get home. And I go to Haven, I go to a lot of these different businesses, and I never get to park on that street because those spots are always taken, and I never thought that it was taken up by the business owners that actually have their businesses there. So I would ask them, where do they park their car? And if they park their car there, where do they think their customers are parking? So if you're petitioning us to not expand these, not reduce the hours to a minute, to an hour, then you need to not park your car there anymore. So I would just throw that out there. If we can, I don't know if we're closing this tonight. If we are, then I'm sorry. I have to go on the fact of what I've seen and what I think I know, and that is that the business owners there are parking their cars in those meters and feeding the meter. So that's my 2 cents worth. That I would. Are we closing this tonight?
We didn't. You can close it. We didn't put a resolution on to act tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because you
All
have
right.
enough
So then I would like those business owners to,
time to speak.
those 16 people that signed this, I want to know where they park. Because the reason we're doing this is to open it up for their customers to park there, to help their businesses. So I just like an answer to that
I'm actually
question.
surprised that not one of them is here to represent their position, to better define what she said. And to be honest, I've heard the same things that Mindy has mentioned.
Oh, I've seen it.
So
I've seen it
I
myself,
think
too,
she's
yeah.
right on.
This is,
right on with that.
my business is on Wheeler, and where there's an hour meter, but you have to, and it's expensive. And I originally was not in favor of putting meters on there, and sort of I thought it might clog things up. But to have shorter-term meters, and it costs a little more on Wheeler. I'm telling you, there's always a place to park on Wheeler. My customers, except on certain congested times, it vastly improved the retail environment on Wheeler, as far as I'm concerned. And I think, I agree, whenever I try to park anywhere near there, I find the fire hydrant on Hopper is the only quick place to park. So, and that's a sad situation. So,
And while I think we all sympathize with the employees of these businesses to find parking, their reason for asking for this is that they need customer parking,
That's
which
right.
they seem to be taking away. So,
that's right. And it's how many spaces total? Anybody count?
no, it's more than that. It's probably 8. Maybe 8?
It's not a ton.
It's
No.
like
they're-
6 to
they're-
8.
But they're prized spaces, and to have them occupied by people who are just feeding them all day long defeats the point. This is a business district.
Is there any comment from the public?
Oh, come on up.
Welcome.
I must say, you've done much of what I how many, well...
You need to
Name-
identify
Let-
yourself,
Oh,
sir.
I'm sorry. Mike Goldstein, Art of Wine.
Oh, for permits, yeah.
I also represent the owner of the property, which is a different corporation. The question you have before you only specifies Bedford Road. Now, from our point of view, it should also include Cooley Street south of Bedford Road.
Adjacent to your store.
Okay.
There are four
Four
spaces
spots.
there.
Right.
I thought that was already an hour. I don't, there's no meter there.
There are meters right next to the R1.
There, all right,
On
there
this-
are 6 spots on Bedford Road. There are 4 on Cooley Street South. I
They all
take
don't have
it,
meters.
I'm sorry,
The
they all
first-
have meters.
4 have meters.
I've never put money in those meters. I go to your store.
We'll share your license number
only
with
on-
the parking
Don't tell
officer.
anybody.
They're only
All right.
on one side, right next to the building.
Now,
That's funny.
in answer, well, we provided you with some paperwork earlier indicating parking violations. Now, let me start off, I suppose, where I was going to end, because I don't have to go through most of this. The originator of the petition from Sir Speedy has his regular space across the street, which is in use most of the day, at least 2 days a week, and if he can find a place more often than that. The gentleman from the tattoo shop, who operate 2 or 3 cars, seem to be backing off. I believe they've gotten a few tickets recently. But usually they have had 2 cars taking up spaces. I believe the owner of Haven has signed the petition. And yet from 3 o'clock on, we frequently see employees of Haven parked on the Cooley Street side and feeding the meter. Now, Carlos knows he's parking there, but okay. The gentleman across the street, Mr. Pajamas and Mr. Baseball Hat, are in a tug of war, and they seem to enjoy it. The gentleman from Haven has to know that when his employee's meter runs out, I am sure the waiter or waitress or kitchen worker is not leaving their job space without telling someone, I have to go out and feed the meter. And therefore, at least 3 of these, and they're 3 fairly important businesses, are applying under false pretense. If you have a problem with getting your customer in, you're not going to park there. Now, we're talking about 40% of the spaces sometimes, not all of the time. Now, there is also a changing pattern during the day, so that if you could say you could have 2-hour parking from 9 o'clock or whatever the starting time is, to 1 o'clock, that's a relatively slow period. But that's a relatively slow period in most retail shops. And as the afternoon goes along, the demand for time increases. The demand for time in the restaurants, which do have a problem, but their problem comes after 6 o'clock.
Yeah, that's what I would have thought, like, so, you know, what time are your Haven people, do they,
Oh, Haven has lunch.
they do have, every day they have lunch?
I don't know.
Haven has lunch?
Yeah.
Every day? On
Haven,
what
I
days?
believe, serves lunch. I do believe that there are meters that are
2 hours
infrequently
on the other side of
used
Cooley.
on the north side of Cooley Street,
Right,
Yeah.
across from Mediterraneo,
right.
and in the lunch period, that is never full. So the presentation that they need that
Right.
is fallacious is a little strong, but it ain't so. Now, we would like to see, actually, let me throw in a conversation we had on this subject today. The 4 spaces on Cooley Street are fundamental, and that they are 2 hours works against everybody, and particularly against us, particularly against Subway. And if they want to clog up the main part of the street, that is along Bedford Road, that's fine with us. But if they want to be foolish and keep that in that area, give us half-hour parking in our 4 spaces. Give us a rapid turn. Now, I'm not sure that that makes an awful lot of sense in trying to control parking. We could make it with 15 minutes. That's not reasonable. Martha's Deli needs more than 15 minutes. Martha's Deli doesn't need 2 hours or an hour, actually, for their customers to come out, sit in their trucks in the parking space, and eat lunch. It would be nice if they went somewhere else. Now, reference has been made to unmetered parking after 3 o'clock. We have adults acting like the kids act today. I'm sorry, that's 150 feet. I need to park 10 feet away from my door. The other side of that is that many people don't know about it. I took a look at the signage on the lane lot. Now, on the bottom of the sign coming up from Manville Road, it says that it's free parking, or I'm not sure what the language is, after 3 p.m.
Where are you talking about, Memorial Plaza?
new lane
No,
lot.
this is the lane
Well,
lot.
all of our commuter lots, we turn it off at 3 o'clock, so, for that reason.
But it may be that we're not doing a good enough job letting people know.
If you make an assumption that someone knows something that is reasonable, you're likely, more often than not, to be disappointed. Because information is not something that the public accumulates. Sorry, public, you're my customers, but that's the way it goes.
No, but we do sign it that way. I mean, there's really, and
There are
there's-
2 signs for that lot. The other sign is directly across from the Grand Union. It says that it is permit parking up to 3 p.m. It does not say that it is free parking after that. If you don't spell it out for the kids, they probably won't know.
well,
So that's a good
see,
point. It's easy to fix
But there's
that.
no meters, so they can't, how else would they pay for it? I mean, it's just.
Well, it's just
No,
that they may not.
I mean, they have to know it's
People
free.
may not perceive that it's not, that
You're
it
making an
ceases to be
assumption of-
permit parking, so.
I know, but that's, we signed Memorial Plaza the same way. and
Yeah.
We've signed it that way since the
I
beginning of
checked it
time.
tonight, it does say you can park after
Here they know.
it
But he's
specifies
saying the
on the
lane,
sign,
they come down
in Memorial
Cooley,
Plaza,
pass Mediterranean,
in the
and then they
enclosed
come back.
area,
But I think
that
we'll do
it
this.
is free after 3 p.m.
And the
There's
signs
ju-
in lane don't say that, you're saying.
One
So we can
sign
do away
does
with it.
and one sign does
All
not.
right.
Okay,
So-
that's a mistake.
But educating the public is a very difficult thing.
I know.
All right, so just to be clear on that point, for anyone who has stuck with us this long, all of our permit parking anywhere in the village is free to anyone. Any open spaces are free to anyone after 3 p.m. on weekdays, on all day Saturday and all day Sunday. So that includes Memorial Plaza, that includes Rebecca Lane, that includes the section of Hopper Street that's commuter parking, and it includes the new lot behind the post office on the former Lane Plumbing site. And that one is the one that's a great asset to this neighborhood.
Can I just add one other thing? Mr. Stein is correct, we need to add Cooley Street, those 4 spots on Cooley.
It's
And
Cooley
do
to
we,
what? What's the next street down?
That's,
there's no,
Cooley is the
but it's
one
only the
that-
first
The
4.
corner by the auto
Yeah,
line.
Yeah.
You don't have another,
No, what does that lead to?
That's
Hopper's
Hobby.
Hopper.
Hobby.
Hobby, yeah.
Hobby.
Yeah, not Hopper.
But, do we have to we would have to, because it's adding those 4 spots. Okay. We'd have to
We'd
All
notice
right,
it.
so just to be clear, Mike,
Post it.
in a perfect world, you would like to see the 4 Cooley Street spaces, the ones adjacent to your building, at 30 minutes?
We could live with that. I would suggest that there are businesses whose customers would park there that would need more than 30. Now,
Okay.
if I could disregard everybody else, sure, I'd love to have that.
Uh-huh.
Oh, I would
But
like to see-
that's not fair.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
right. You're
that's fine.
absolutely
No, I'm
right.
just asking. So your,
I
then
will
your
catch
first
hell when I
choice,
get-
based on your
Right.
overall balancing.
It's currently 2 hours?
It is currently
All right,
2
so
hours.
Is-
if we
is 1 hour
handle
parking
uniform
everywhere.
1 hour, yeah.
Right. May I put in just history in a previous term of Patty's and a less enlightened board. That's not buttering
board
you
yet,
up.
Mike.
I've seen a lot of.
I might have been on that board.
Brian was
Brian
here.
was calling.
I might have been here.
Sorry, Brian. 20 years ago, we sat here together. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
it went on. When Cooley Street was changed from two-way to one-way traffic, they sort of threw us a bone. We lost a lot of business because of the change in the traffic pattern. Took a long time for that to recover. But they did give us 45-minute parking on Cooley Street at the 4 meters, which were there at that time. I think maybe it was just to keep us from making a lot of noise, but it worked. And looking at what happens with Subway, which has a high volume, and arguably the need to try to keep that turning as quickly as possible. Whether you like their sandwiches or not, everybody goes there. And if they pull in and they sit and they eat, you have a major problem. Now, 45 minutes, I'd love half an hour if you'd be kind enough to do it. But 45 minutes makes sense, and we can live with an hour. Now, if you do an hour, you've got 16 people who have signed a petition that is against their own best interests, and you can do something to enhance their businesses by increasing the turn of spaces. It's worked over on Washington Avenue. I've talked with people over there. It's worked, I guess, on Wheeler Avenue.
Yeah, there are two or three 15-minute spaces on Wheeler, and
Right.
we also did it in front of King's Crown.
You know, we also have, I think, 3.
Oh, really?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
We did 15 minutes
Yeah,
in front
there's
of
2
King's
spots
Crown.
there.
There were 2 spots there to sort of blow through the traffic a
I
little
think
bit.
we
And I
have
think it
3 or
worked there.
4 spaces right across the street here on the bridge that are 2 hour as well. If you keep those 2 hours, maybe that's a compromise. They weren't affected by this hearing tonight, but
Right.
they are the only 2 hour spaces remaining on Bedford Road. Maybe some of these merchants would appreciate knowing that there are still 2 hours just across the street here, you know.
Is there any available permit spaces at Hopper?
Yeah,
Yes.
Judy made a note, there's about 13 of them.
There's 13 spaces at Hopper, which is
There are
very
13
close.
spaces. It is $220 for the entire year to park in Hopper.
That's 10 tickets, folks.
Okay, I have
It's about 10 parking
PhotoWorks
tickets.
purchases permits. So I'm surprised that they
Right.
signed this, but they do
Right.
park in the Hopper lot.
No, I'm not surprised they signed it. They're not parking in those spots, so they do want their customers to have access to it.
Right, okay.
Yeah, that's
But
fair.
yes, so.
But their
you're-
customers
but
Shouldn't be
that-
too
are
loud.
2-hour customers.
And that is really
So-
only 2 blocks away from the stores, but currently just PhotoWorks is 5 feet.
But
Okay.
you're saying ideally an hour on Marble and 30 minutes on
I'll take as
Cooley?
little time as possible on
Ideally.
on
Bedford,
Cooley
you're
Street.
saying.
On Bedford and then 30 on
Yeah,
Cooley?
right.
Okay.
No,
But-
an hour on Cooley.
All right, so if I could suggest a way
Yeah,
forward.
we just-
I-
We will live with
I mean-
an hour and be very, very
I-
happy.
I think you keep them uniform. I don't think you
Well, I
go
don't know,
30
we
minutes.
didn't keep it uniform on Manville or Wheeler or Washington. In all of those streets, we've got little 15-minute areas. And I think that has really helped the businesses in each one of those spots. A lot of shoppers. I mean, I
Except for
see
the ones
people-
by King's Crown, who, unfortunately, there's still people parking there to go to the theater and said they would rather, it's
Well,
just
again,
20
there's no enforcement.
It's $20 for them to park.
None of
What's
this
the
is
big
enforced
deal?
after 6
It's
PM.
not-
so-
No, this is before 6
Right.
PM when it's 15-minute parking,
Right.
when they go to a movie, you
All
know.
right, but so that, obviously, we need to reconsider this. Do you, obviously, they need to speak for themselves, but I don't think that Subway signed this, the proprietor of the
I
Subway.
don't know that they were approached.
Are
We
you-
were not approached.
Are you aware of what their attitude is about this?
No.
Okay, so if I could suggest a way forward, first off, I think we should close the public hearing because it sounds as though the change that was proposed does not address Cooley Street anyway, and we would need to renotice a different thing. Secondly, pending everybody else's thoughts, I think I can reach out to Carlos, who I think, from Sir Speedy, who I think was kind of the organizer of this petition, and see what kind of response he has to some of the comments that have gone on tonight, and invite him to clarify his opinion, because I can say, based on my observation, just as Colleen and Mindy have already said, that my sense of it is that more turnover in those spaces would be largely beneficial to most everybody.
Well, that would mean he would have to give up his space, though.
So recognize that, again, for the purpose of anybody listening, none of this applies to cars parking after 6 p.m. And so people who are going to Foley's or to Haven.
It does. The parking time limits are still in
No,
place.
not after 6.
No,
Not
not
after
after
6.
No.
You don't have to pay. Is that not true, that
No, there's no
the
time
law
limit.
falls away, or you just don't have to pay?
They're not enforced after 6. There's no parking enforcement after 6
Right.
PM.
The
At
regulation
meetings.
ends at 6.
That is correct.
It's not a matter of no enforcement. I
All
can
right.
give you times when there is a lot of no enforcement.
Okay.
All right, well, that's another discussion.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, sir. Do you have anything else to add, or shall we move on?
When you rewrite this, make sure that the inclusion of Cooley Street probably does not include the area north of Bedford Road.
Right.
Right.
But that area, incidentally, as far as the restaurants are concerned, and as far as the nail place or anybody else who thinks that they need more than an hour or whatever the time limit will be, will find 2-hour parking
Perfect placement.
meters there. There are something in the vicinity, I believe, of 22 to 25.
Right. And easy to get in, easy to get out. So,
I'm finished.
all right. Thank you,
Thank you
sir.
very
Thank
much.
you.
Appreciate it. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
Thank you, Mike.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is closed. Let's go to the resolutions, number 191, Colleen. Pardon? Another tape. All right, brief pause for a new tape.
Presidential.
Welcome back. Brief break to change the tape in the camera. We're back to our resolutions, number 191, Colleen.
Resolved that pre-check register dated October 22nd, 2012, covering check numbers 73724 through 73816 have been reviewed, and they are hereby approved as listed below. From the general fund, the special purpose fund, the water fund, capital fund, refuse fund, pool fund, trust and agency fund, totaling $195,461.83.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions? I had one here.
Yeah, I have one.
Uh,
Slowly consolidated.
That's the
That's
water
water
plant.
treatment plant.
Oh, okay.
The Prius
They
was in an
change
accident,
them every so often.
Yeah.
I would- yes.
and
Yeah, we got full reimbursement.
we got full reimbursement for it, so, okay, and then,
It's still okay, it's not bad. It wasn't total.
No, just two.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been fixed, and we got reimbursement from the insurance company.
all right, and then for discussion on the time, the data serve cost for repaired finance printers, at some point as we approach the next season of budget, we should look at as we have often talked, the overall spectrum of our maintenance contracts and lease versus buy decisions on some of this stuff. So, any other comments?
Yeah, a question about, there's a check to the state controller for forfeited bail.
Yeah, the court has to turn over funds that it receives. They have a different accounting process than us. They take a lot of cash receipts in, but when people when people forfeit bail on occasion, a portion of that does belong to the state.
Okay.
Like they take portions of our vehicle and traffic tickets, they surcharge
I've never seen it
things.
before, so
Yeah,
thank you.
it comes up. I don't know if they pay that quarterly, so you'll see it every now and then.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, number 192.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees has reviewed the minutes of the meeting held on Monday, October 8th, and they are hereby approved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or corrections? Judy, could we add to the paragraph referring to Senator Ball's visit that he also provided a proclamation to Bert Ruiz naming him to the Veterans Hall of Fame? With that correction, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 193.
Resolve the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the mayor to sign the updated management confidential agreements.
Is there a second?
Second.
These
Third.
are non-union contracts for our management staff, and they are all receiving a common increase of 2% effective June 1, 2012, 1.5% effective June 1, 2013, and 1% effective December 1, 2013. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. Number 194.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the installation of a crosswalk at Marble Avenue and Hopper Street based upon the recommendation of the Public Safety Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is due to traffic conditions on Marble Avenue that I'm reading from the Public Safety Commission minutes. Due to traffic conditions on Marble Avenue by A Mangiare Restaurant and parking lot, the PSC again recommends to add a crosswalk and a yield to pedestrian sign. Patty, this will be done by our people in-house. It's a...
Well,
Has
no.
to go to the state.
Acasella Contracting is going to drop those curbs,
Okay.
and we'll do the crosswalk, the painted crosswalk, but they're
But
doing
the-
the sidewalk work.
The handicapped accessible curbs.
That's right.
So,
yeah.
I mean, clearly, it's a condition that needs help with the different environment down there. Any other comments?
Is the speed limit is 30?
Speed limit on Marble is 30. We're fortunate that it's a very flat area with a lot of visibility, but
Right, right.
it raises concerns. You know, people do come up that street
Very
at
fast.
a good rate of speed, and this is going to be something that hopefully is signed well enough that people
Right.
anticipate the crosswalk.
I don't know if it's appropriate here, and I mentioned to Jeff, I happened to be in another city and noticed a pedestrian crosswalk sign, the standard pedestrian crosswalk sign that had small LEDs that surround the edge of it.
Okay.
Not like Christmas lights or anything like that, just a rather subtle element, but slowly sort of doing a chaser-like pattern. So I mentioned to Jeff, he's aware of the product.
Okay.
I don't know if it's appropriate here or not, but it was helpful even in broad daylight just to bring a little extra focus to those
Well,
signs.
if the board wants us to look at it, we'd be happy to look at that. And-
Take a look.
Okay.
So,
Sure.
and I would defer to Jeff's judgment as a professional engineer. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 195.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees, as per Village Law, Section 6-612, hereby approves the abandonment of a 40-foot wide right-of-way formerly known as Manville Lane, formerly known Pierce Lane, which traversed between Bedford Road and Washington Avenue within the Village of Pleasantville through lands presently owned by 485-501 Washington Avenue, Company LLC, and designated on the village tax map as Section 99.14, Block 1, Lot 19.
Subject to.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Subject to short form CEQA determination that there is no adverse environmental impacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Or should we say based on the
Yeah,
short?
based on.
Based on as opposed to subject to, because that review has already been done.
It's been done.
Right? Okay, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved, 196.
Oh, my Lord, B.
If you can read
Isn't
this
this
in...
Jonathan?
If you can read
I would be
this...
mulching this right down to the core.
Oh, poor John.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, no.
All right, so this is a resolution encouraging on-site mulching and composting of leaves. And I'll just state that the Village Conservation Advisory Council and the Pleasantville Recycles Committee both propose that on-site mulching and composting of leaves on public and private properties throughout the village will result in 11 improvements, environmental and economic benefits. And whereas it is noted that the Village of Pleasantville Parks and Recreation has been successfully following this practice within the village parks for 1 year, providing many of the benefits stated in this resolution. And then further resolved, we encourage landscapers to do it as well, and further resolved to encourage residents to consult with Pleasantville Recycle's website and to get more information, and the Westchester villages may benefit on this economical environmental benefit method of leaf management. That's as best as I'm
Well
doing.
done.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is further to the presentation we had last week, which anybody who's interested can pick up on an on-demand webcast at pctv76.org from a representative of the Lovum and Leavum leaf group. And it's a pretty convincing argument that mulching leaves is a logical thing to do, not only for your yard, but also for the environment.
And I would just like to say, I was not at the meeting last time, but so my comment is I go around the village now and I see people with huge leaf piles in front of their house. And I'm thinking this is so retro, this is so 20th century to be, sweeping your leaves up. Just mow them up.
Well, excuse me, but my husband, my landscaper, who happens to be my husband,
Yeah, I am
I told
my
him-
landscaper.
when I told him about this, and he said he does mulch as much as he can, but when there's a lot of leaves on your lawn, you cannot do it. He
Okay.
told me
And
it's
these
not
are the-
good for the
These
grass.
are the morons that we have to
Excuse me, your husband a moron? You heard that, honey?
What? I think
That
you
was
got that.
really
I think
nasty. I'll
Jim
tell you right
Berard.
now. He's not a moron.
Grind him up.
And you just come by
Grind
he
him up.
grinds up the leaves,
I'll
but when
come
they're
help
this
him.
high on your lawn, you can't grind them up.
I've
So-
got an
We
electric
do need a
lawnmower,
special
I'll
part.
give him.
You do. You
need
do.
a
You need a
special-
You need
special
the
part.
Vulcan.
Yeah, the Vulcan.
There you go.
That's right. That's what
That's
it's
it.
called, the Vulcan.
Good going,
Jonathan is right, and he didn't
But the
call my husband a
website is
moron.
excellent.
Call my
if
husband.
people want
Okay.
to-
There's a
All
lot,
right.
there's a
Just
lot of
saying.
benefits to it.
I'll deal with you
agree.
later, Mr. Scarstaff.
My favorite piece of the presentation last week was the commercial equipment called the mulcher.
Oh, the
Oh, the
vulture.
vulture, that's right, it's the vulture. The
You missed that,
Vulcan.
Brian. So all in
That's the
favor?
mind
That's the Star
control.
Trek.
All in favor to number 196? Aye. Number 197?
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following budget amendments: $1,000 out of transferred from police automobile equipment to police radio repair, and then also to mitigate funds from the water mains to FEMA emergencies. We are transferring $106,895 from capital water mains to capital FEMA mitigation. There being no further business to come.
No.
Enough
for you.
That's done.
You want to read that too?
No, I'm good.
All in favor of 197 budget amendments?
Aye.
Aye. Did we have a second?
Second.
Did I get a second? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Now, let's
done.
see here. I had one more announcement I wanted to make, and that is further to the comment I made about the minutes, and that is that Bert Ruiz, a longtime Pleasantville person and the commander of the Fancher Nickel American Legion Post based here in Pleasantville, which has been strong for decades but has undergone a lot of growth and revival, has been named to the Veterans Hall of Fame and will be inducted into that on November 1 at Peekskill Middle School. So congratulations to Bert for that high honor. So, Brian, motion to adjourn. We didn't get the motion yet. You have to make the motion.
Don't forget about
There being no further business.
Don't forget about the Reflection Scholarship race on Saturday and the
All right.
Ragamuffin and.
Is there a motion to
Farmers market.
adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Just move it.
All in favor?
Aye.
We will be going into executive session after this meeting, brief executive session, to discuss contract matters and the PBA negotiations. I thank you all for your time. Look forward to your comments in the future. Good night.